Why was it possible for an HOA with thousands of homeowners to lose millions? Every homeowners association asks its residents to do something remarkably simple: pay your dues, trust the people you've elected, and assume someone is making sure those dollars are being spent responsibly. Most of the time, that's exactly what happens. But organizational failures rarely begin with dramatic moments. They begin quietly. One missed question, one unchecked invoice, one meeting that few people attend. Until one day, people discover the HOA they've trusted no longer resembles the one they thought they had. According to prosecutors, that's exactly what happened at one of Florida's largest homeowners associations, and it would eventually become one of the largest HOA fraud investigations in the country. Welcome to HOA Case Files. This is our second case where we explore how one HOA lost millions while nobody stopped it. The Hammocks is a master plan community in southwest Miami-Dade, Florida. With thousands of homes and a multi-million-dollar operating budget, its homeowners association functions much like a small local government. It maintains common property, including the clubhouse, pools, playground, parks, and beaches seen here. The HOA maintains these amenities through contracts with vendors for landscaping and maintenance. And as you can imagine, the HOA has substantial financial assets. Beginning in 2022, investigators announced a series of arrests involving current and former board members, employees, and contractors associated with the HOA. Prosecutors alleged that over a period of years, millions of dollars belonging to homeowners have been diverted through shell companies, fraudulent contracts, inflated invoices, kickback schemes, and other financial misconduct. The former HOA president pled guilty to orchestrating the scheme that led to losses exceeding $11 million. And during the investigation, a judge appointed an independent receiver to assume control of the HOA's operations, replacing the existing leadership while financial records were reviewed and governance was stabilized. It's tempting to think the story is simply about theft, but let's ask a different question. How can an organization responsible for millions of dollars continue operating for years before anyone successfully intervenes? That question shifts our attention away from individual wrongdoing and toward the system that made the alleged wrongdoing possible. Because organizations don't fail out once, they fail one safeguard at a time. And that's where this case becomes much larger than one neighborhood in South Florida. It's a case study in how trust, authority, and oversight can slowly drift apart until the people who own an organization no longer have meaningful control over it. In the next section, we'll examine the first concept that helps explain why this happens, the principal-agent problem. For agency theory, let's return to the governance model. Every homeowners association depends on a simple act of trust. Homeowners elect a board and then hand over responsibility for making decisions on behalf of the community. That arrangement is so common that we rarely stop to think about it. It is what's called an agency relationship. One group, the homeowners, is known as a principal. The board becomes the agent. The homeowners ask the board to make decisions that serve the interests of the community, and most of the time, this arrangement works remarkably well. Thousands of volunteer board members across the country quietly maintain neighborhoods, approve budgets, negotiate contracts, and solve problems that most residents never even notice. The relationship naturally creates a situation with asymmetric information. Because the elected representatives, the HOA board members, know more about the decisions they're making while serving on the board than do the people they represent. And when one group has more information than another, accountability becomes more difficult. Think about what happens every month. Thousands of homeowners pay assessments. Those assessments become contracts, vendor payments, maintenance projects, legal fees, reserve accounts, insurance policies, and countless financial decisions that are made throughout the year. As organizations become larger, something predictable happens. The people providing the money become increasingly separated from the decisions about how that money is spent. Distance creates information gaps. Information gaps create opportunities for mistakes or misconduct. Agency theory predicts that organizations need safeguards to bridge those gaps, not because leaders are presumed to act improperly, but because organizations that depend solely on trust are more vulnerable. So, what are the safeguards supposed to be in an HOA? Healthy organizations ask this question. They build systems that allow people to verify, not simply trust, that decisions are being made appropriately. Independent audits, open financial reporting, competitive bidding, competitive elections, question and answer exchanges with homeowners. None of these safeguards exist because an HOA assumes wrongdoing. They exist because good governance reduces the opportunity for wrongdoing. Agency theory helps explain why it's important to have oversight, but it doesn't help explain why so many homeowners fail to provide that oversight. For that, we need to look at a common assumption, the assumption that someone else is paying attention. And that brings us to collective action. In this community, there were over 6,500 homeowners. Ask yourself, who's responsible for making sure the board is managing the association properly? Each homeowner assumes someone else is reading the financial reports, attending board meetings, asking difficult questions. Someone else would notice if something wasn't right. Ironically, when responsibility belongs to everyone, it often feels like it belongs to no one. This is a collective action problem. When the neighborhood appears well maintained, there's very little reason to suspect that anything has gone wrong. That's one of the paradoxes of successful organizations. When they appear to be functioning well, people naturally devote less attention to supervising them. The better things appear, the easier it becomes for oversight to weaken. According to prosecutors, the alleged misconduct of the Hammocks unfolded over a period of years, not days or weeks. That timeline is important. Large organizational failures are rarely the result of a single dramatic event. Instead, they emerge gradually, while ordinary governance mechanisms become less active or less effective. By the time investigators become involved, the organizational problems may have already been developing for years, which leads to our third lens, normalization of deviance. How is it that problems could develop for years? Researchers studying disasters, from Challenger space shuttle accident to the major corporate scandals, noticed a recurring pattern. Organizations don't usually wake up one morning and decide to abandon their standards. Instead, small irregularities become accepted, then slightly larger ones, then larger still. Eventually, practices that once would have raised immediate concern begin to feel ordinary, simply because they've continued without immediate consequences. This is called normalization of deviance. Here's a great visualization of how it works from sketchplanations. Notice all of the little things that are being ignored. The cars parked in front of the keep clear sign. The workers don't have hard hats on, even though there's a sign indicating they should. Garbage is around the trash can, not in it, despite the reminder sign right above the can. There are even more seemingly small rules that are being broken. According to this theory, the normalization of deviance, the problem isn't that every irregularity signals a major issue. It's that repeated departures from normal expectations can become easier to overlook over time if no one challenges them. Looking back at this diagram, it's not that any one of these things, the wrong parking spot, missing hard hat, or strewn garbage, is a significant concern independently. As a group, however, they indicate a culture in which expectations aren't being upheld. So let's go back to the Hammocks. If we look at the governance, notice something. It's not a report card on individual people, it's an assessment of the governance system. The association appears to have had formal authority. It had a board, policies, professionals, legal counsel. Those structures existed. The deeper challenge was whether the system's designed to provide transparency, independent oversight, and active owner participation were functioning effectively enough to detect problems before they became crisis. And that distinction matters because organizations rarely fail from the absence of structure. They fail when the structure is no longer matched by meaningful accountability. Cases like this naturally raise an uncomfortable question. Could something similar happen in another homeowner association? And the answer is, it depends. Not because every HOA is vulnerable to fraud, and certainly not because every board member should be viewed with suspicion. Most homeowner associations are led by volunteers who dedicate countless hours to maintaining their communities. The question isn't whether people should be trusted. Strong organizations don't choose between trust and accountability. They require both, trusting humans and building in structures for accountability. Now take a minute to ask, could this happen in your HOA? Are financial reports regularly shared with homeowners? Can residents easily understand how their money is being spent? Are homeowners encouraged to and comfortable with asking questions? Are board elections truly competitive? Do independent professionals review the association's finances? Is responsibility shared, or is it concentrated in only a few people? These questions don't guarantee good governance, but they dramatically increase the likelihood that problems will be identified early before they become crises. The most important lesson from the Hammocks isn't simply that millions of dollars were stolen. It's that healthy organizations don't depend on extraordinary people. They depend on ordinary people participating consistently. Oversight isn't a sign of distrust. It's one of the ways communities demonstrate responsibility to one another. Good governance protects honest leaders just as much as it protects homeowners. Every HOA has rules, every HOA has people, and every HOA has a governance story. The question is whether we recognize it before it becomes a case file. I'm glad you joined me for this episode of HOA Case Files. If you found this analysis helpful, consider subscribing. Each week, we'll examine another real HOA conflict and use organizational theory to understand not just what happened, but why.